Hello, everyone, and welcome to episode number 2 of the Limitless TCG podcast, the podcast all about competitive Pokemon. I am your regular host, Connor Hayward, and joining me once again, the regular co host, Robin Schultz. How are you?
Hi, doing good.
Good, good. So, before we get into the show, I just want to give a big shout out to everyone over on the Patreon, /Limitless TCG. Those guys are massive help, leaving some money for us to kind of work on some new projects, and we have some news about those. So the big one, I'm sure a few people have already seen that we will be casting Cologne coming up at the end of the month, and we had a call go out for someone to join us for the casting team for that, which we've finalised today, and that should be all announced soon. So keep your eyes out for some more news. We also have some other bits and pieces of news, like various things that have kind of been in the works for a while. Nothing ready to announce yet, right? But definitely stay tuned. We're going to try and make the Patreon page more worth it. For those who are unable to kind of make a monetary donation to us via Patreon, another way you can help us out, we should now be on iTunes. So give us a review on the iTunes store. It makes us kind of go higher up the listings. It makes it a bit easier to find for people who just search for a Pokemon podcast. So that would be greatly appreciated. So with that kind of stuff out the way, Robin, how was your week? You had a couple of cups this weekend, right?
Yes, I played two cups this weekend, and they were both actually pretty big. Like the two biggest cups I have ever played in this region. So, like the attendance numbers for cups so far are looking healthy, also in other parts of Europe and also in the US from what so that's pretty cool. So on Saturday, I went to this which had 48 players.
Nice.
So the exact amount that's needed for the top 16 CP. So yeah, we were
Easy.
happy about that. Yeah, without the quarterly limit, the 20 CP for top 16 are actually
It's super relevant,
super
right?
relevant.
Because now you can just turn up. If you have enough people, great, you have your points. Like, okay, you still got to win a couple of games, but it just means that you're not kind of consistently punished for like not making it.
Yeah, it's really cool to still be playing for something even after picking up too long.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, it was really cool playing in those big cups. Like it honestly felt like playing a side event cup at a regional, but it was just normal league cups.
Well, I mean,
It's really cool.
do you reckon that's what do you reckon's causing that? Is that just new season hype, European world hype?
Yeah, probably like mostly European world type combined with, of course, new season hype.
Mm-hmm.
It's like, of course, our early season always has the highest attendance, but
Mm-hmm.
this is like much higher than last season's
I was trying to think. I
new
think
season attendance.
the last couple of seasons, we haven't come close to that. I mean, admittedly, in Munich, we don't get those numbers. Like, I've never had those numbers since moving. But
Yeah, I think our Sunday Cup was more than double the amount of players that the Quarter One Cup at the same location had last with
nice.
69 players. It was huge.
Yeah, that's a big cup. But
Yeah, and maybe the removal of a quarterly best finish limit also,
well,
although
probably for
it's
the top
probably not
players, right?
relevant for too many players. It's yeah, it's still intensive. It still makes a few more players go probably.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. Um, Meanwhile, this week,
So should we get into a small tournament recap?
yeah, if you've got one, like any particular games that you hit that were cool.
Yeah, so I played Mewtwo at both of those cups. It was basically my worlds list. I put in one Victini
Mm-hmm.
instead of and not Victini, Wobo because of Victini,
Yeah, the
because
Wobbuffets.
abilities are Yeah, abilities art with the Victini is just really good. It was not easy, but with Wobbuff attack, you can just stop a Victini and suddenly the matchup, which was like maybe 45, 55, feels like it's 75,
Mm-hmm.
25, like pretty favored, honestly. So that was one card I changed for Saturday.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, the Wobbuffet was actually insane. I made it to top 8, and then I played against Ability Zard, and Ability Zard. So,
So you're just like, right, put those Victinias away. Uh,
yeah,
you have no energy. Easy.
basically, one could say that the Wobbuffet single-handedly won me the tournament. I
Nice.
probably wouldn't have won all those matches without it.
Mm-hmm.
So, yeah, that cup was yeah, of course, 6 rounds and top 8.
Mm-hmm.
Actually lost the first round against an Aegislash deck, which is a pretty rough matchup with power plants, was like double power plant and Lusamine, and it could just one KO me with one spell tech. So
Mm-hmm.
I lost that, but then um, hit a bunch of like better matchups. Also had like one or two opponents dead drawing against me, so that helped. And yeah, and then in top 8, I just played against ability Zards, and I won 3 or 4 matches to 0.
Nice.
Like some games we just played normally. Other games I would have lost without Wobbuffet, but still won because of Wobbuffet.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, that was a very successful cup. Then the next day we went to Arnhem, which is in the
Mm-hmm.
Netherlands, but right beside the German border. So it's usually like almost 50%. It feels almost like a local cup. And it's, yeah, like I said, we had almost 70 masters, which I heard was the biggest cup in the Netherlands so far.
Wow.
And yeah, usually we would play 7 rounds, but since we play best of 3 and it would then take too long, we played one Swiss round less, so 6 rounds, best of 3.
Mm-hmm.
And I played the same list again, except I cut the second reset stamp for a Mekago GX.
Mm-hmm.
Like I haven't played Mekago at Worlds and haven't missed it too much, but it's just
Remind me
a
what
really
it
good
does.
attacker.
I've like glanced at it, but
For free energy, it does 50 damage, and you can discard as many energy as you want from your board, and it does 50. So it's similar to Dragon Knight in that it discards energy and does a lot of damage for it, but
mm-hmm.
it's much more flexible when use it with only having free energy active than some energy on the.
Okay.
So it's actually pretty good synergy with Solgaleo.
Yep.
And it's just overall easier to use than Dragon Knight, but sometimes like to want to kill an opposing Mewtwo or Charizard, you need to discard 5 energy. While
Mm-hmm.
with Dragon Knight, you only need to discard 3 energy, which can be quite relevant in some situations. So I still played the Dragon Knight
Mm-hmm.
in addition to the Mekago. Also, the Dragon Knight is searchable with Mysterious Treasure, which is really nice. I'm not sure if I would play both going forward, but I definitely liked having the Dragon Knight option still. And I also used the Mekago a decent one. It should probably be a staple in
Mm-hmm.
like it's fine to play without it if you have Dragon Knight, but overall I guess Mekago is better. But still not completely sure about that.
I mean, so I've been like that's what the deck I played most this week. In trying to test ready for Cologne now, and the deck that like on paper, every time I look at it, I'm like, this deck can't be that bad to play, right? You just choose the best attacker for the situation. But the question then becomes, what is the best attacker for any given situation? And you have so many options that it's like, sometimes it's not as obvious as I'd like it to be, and you can get some really weird turns with it. Like it's really tricky to play. Um, and I also put a few games into the ability based Reshizard deck, so Tour's List from Worlds, and I actually really dislike it after playing a few games of it. I've just had fistfuls of fire energy every game, and I've just gone, uh, where's the welder? Like, at least give me a welder to do something with all this. But nope. Um, and yeah, I don't know. I think it's a tricky deck to play. So I avoided playing this weekend by judging a challenge for the first time in 2 years. We had six masters. So the two seniors had to play in and amongst the masters. That was fun. It's been a while since I have judged. It was entertaining. It's also the first time I've ever had to give a slow play penalty. Because normally at a challenge, I'm like, I don't really care. Like, I'm just gonna make sure no one does anything really dumb. But this one got really competitive in the last round. There's a difference between the second place and no CP, and yeah, there was definitely some slow play happening. So I was like, oh well, stop it, I guess. Oh, I don't know what I'm supposed to do here. Just cut it out. Play faster. But so because we played best of 3 for the challenge as well, which is a discussion point. We could have a whole 20-minute chat about just that if we really wanted to. But for the challenge with so few people, it's fine. I have been to cups which are way too long because of the best of 3 rule.
Yeah, our cup, with even though it was only 6 rounds, it still took a while. I'm not sure if I prefer best of 1 or best of 3, but yeah, both have their advantages. Usually, if I travel to a cup, I'm usually fine with staying there for all day if I already committed to going there, so might as well play best of 3. But I also don't really mind playing the best of 1. And about your point of Mewtwo being hard to play, I think I partly agree. It's not always obvious what to do, but I think it's still much easier to play than decks where you have different attackers. Because in this deck you always have a Mewtwo active. You never really want anything else, and you just have to choose, which it's not the hardest thing. But in a deck like, for example, Pikachu Zekrom, you have a lot of different attackers like Pikazek and Raichu and and stuff like Zapdos and Hoopa. And you can also strategically pass with having like Jirachi active to get better reset stamp value, for example. So I think something like that is still harder to play. Whereas Mewtwo, a lot of the time you just want to do something like Solgaleo once and then just one KO, one KO.
Yep.
I think it's
that might be one of the reasons why I found it so hard to
hard.
play. Is I prized Solgaleo way too many times. Like, I think it was my last prize in about 4 games in a row. It's just like, oh, that's why I was running out of energy.
Yeah, I think if I wanted to play any of the Pokemon twice to not prize them, it would definitely be Solgaleo. Like, for example, thing like Mikago or Dragonite might be important as well, but if you play both, it doesn't really matter if you prize one, because usually the other one will also get the job done. Or something like Latios, if you prize it, you care too much as well, because against matchups where it's good against tag teams, you can also just do the charge energy and one KO play. Don't really need to use Latios, even though using it might be the safest strategy against Green's Reshizard specifically. But you can also just attack and use Dragonite and Mikago, and it also gets you there. Whereas if you price Solgaleo, it can get awkward.
Yeah, there are entire like games where I've gone. I have had. Well, also it just means that like if you get the Solgaleo in the discard, you always attack because there's always one welder to do it, which means that you can then set up for other attacks later if you want to, but you can just kind of guarantee an early attack. It is the easiest attack to use in the whole deck.
Yeah, it's uh for sure the attack I used the most over probably all the games I've ever played with it. But also my version is much more reliant on that, like a lot
Mm-hmm.
of other Mewtwo
Mm-hmm.
lists. It's not that easy to just spam Welder every turn with it. I also use Hapu and Tate
Mm-hmm.
and Liza to just draw some cards and then attach like, manually twice and attack with Solgaleo. Is usually fine. I've been thinking of putting in Flareon GX actually, because if you go second and don't hit Welder, then you still get Flareon into the discard pile and get like a pseudo Solgaleo without the 130 damage, but still the energy acceleration part of the hand.
Mm-hmm.
And then you can follow it up with a big attack from Mekago, Dragonite, or Rishizard, whatever the turn after.
Sure. Yeah, it is something that it does struggle with the energy thing, but maybe we can save any further discussion on that because maybe we'll do a slightly more detailed analysis of it later on in the
Okay,
show.
so
Um, so
to recap my the experience of the second cup, like I started 3-0, so up to that point it was going well, but then I lost the mirror, and then I tied to a mirror, and then I lost the last round to Mega Gardevoir, so to not Mega Gardevoir Silver, of course.
yeah,
I was
I lost
just
the
thinking
last round to
about
Mega Gardevoir because it turns out this was expanded.
So I didn't even make top 16 in the end. I got like 18th.
Uh, it's always super annoying to go that far and then just miss out on at least getting some of the reward back, right? But
Yeah. So made me realize that the list is not the greatest in the Mewtwo mirror.
mm-hmm.
Like I don't play custom catchers, which is
They're
a
big.
disadvantage against a
Yeah,
list
they're
that
very
plays
big in the
custom
mirror.
catchers.
Like,
And also Gardevoir is annoying. If they play two Psychic Charm, you just can't win. And if one Psychic Charm, it's fine, but still not the easiest matchup. So I don't know. Like the Mewtwo is still good, but I might have to change up the list a bit.
sure. Well, that's something I like about it though. It feels boxy, right? Of you kind of keep the core concept of Mewtwo, the fire acceleration, and then you can kind of move your attackers around to be exactly what you expect to see at any given tournament. Um, and I kind of like that flexibility of you can basically tweak it week in week out depending on what you expect to see. Um, so
That's pretty much a core of Pokemon of the best jigs, and there's like I
mm-hmm,
think not too much that should be changed around in attacker wise, but yeah, you can definitely change around the trainers a bit. Like
mm-hmm,
against Gardevoir, you can put in Lysander labs,
mm-hmm,
at least one Lysander lab, and then the matchup is fine. And yeah, some other stuff you can do.
sure. Okay, so that was our week in Pokemon, more or less, right? But obviously, there's a lot more going on than just that. There's a lot more to this game than just what we got up to on any given weekend. And this weekend marked the start of the regional circuit for next season, or for the season, with the usual kickoff tournament down under. So Melbourne special event was last weekend, and it was, as usual, they kick off the format. It's always interesting to me, at least, because for the last few seasons, at least, what happens in the first Oceania region of the year doesn't necessarily map then to like the first European or US regional in terms of how the format develops since Worlds. But maybe this is more likely to be the case because this isn't the first post-rotation tournament. And once again, two of the standout Oceania players from the World Championships made top 8. So World Champion Henry Brand made top 8. But he did not take the win this time, losing in top 4 to Kewen Kababe, who played Pikarom again. And he basically managed to spike the win. And that's actually, it was what, top 8 Worlds, winning a regional. That's a pretty good back-to-back set of results to go and get. But the format shifted quite a bit from Worlds, so the top 8 was comprised of Kewen's Pikarom, Angus Johnson's Ability Reshizard, Carol Poynier's Green's Reshizard, Henry Brand played the Mewtwo box again making the same change as Robin suggested of putting in the Wob for the Victinis. Brent Tonneson Pikarom was 5th. Aaron Stringfellow played Ability Reshizard. The hero Jay Tyrell made top 8 playing Quagsire and Naganadel. And Joshua Bradley finishes off the top 8 with another Green's Reshizard. But up on the screen, for those who are watching the video, and we'll probably post this out on Facebook, or I'll maybe put a link or like put it in the show notes. So if you're listening on audio, there should be a little link somewhere that you can click on to come and find the image. We have the format for Melbourne, which is pretty different to Worlds, right? Like we've seen a pretty big shift towards Reshiram Charizard there.
Yeah, this is basically the same that I've been seeing at locals recently, and basically just abilities are everywhere. It seems like this is the favorite deck to copy right now, which is also the reason why I played Wobbuffet. The deck is just really good, and it's also very fun to play. Like, who doesn't doesn't want to 1 KO tag team with the Victini Prism Star? And the deck is just incredibly fun, and it's really strong. Has maybe the best matchup spread around. So yeah, I definitely expected this to happen. Just like abilities are everywhere.
Well, it's another case of Tord Reklev played a deck.
Yeah, therefore, that helps as well.
Therefore, I should have played the deck, is everyone's reasoning. And they're not wrong. It is a very strong deck. I've had some terrible bricks of a hand with it. But as long as you hit well within the first 2 turns, you don't care anymore. You just throw energy at the board until they start blowing everything up in front of you. Taking one hit knockouts on basically everything. But yeah, the Reshizard makes up nearly half of all decks. And combined with Pikarom, it takes up that's most of the game is just 2 decks right now. At least in Melbourne.
Yeah. Yeah. It's worth noting that 2 of the Charizard decks were Greens variant, and both made top 8.
Yep. Yeah, of the 2, there are only 2 in top 32, right? And they both made the top 8 cut.
Yeah. So it was still greatly outperformed by Abilities Art, but had a really good conversion rate. So deck is probably still really good. Green Sat.
Yeah, but then I can't play Ninetales and Gust without having to use custom catches. And, can't use a Victini as easily. And where's the fun in any of this? Like, we gotta knock out these tag teams.
I don't like Greens either.
I also played a lot of games with Greens this week and have spent a lot of time going, but But why is my hand not got a greens in it? What do I do now? And basically just lose is the answer. The other thing to note here is not an increase deck, it is a decreasing deck. There was one Malamar. One in the whole of top 32 in Melbourne. And after the hype it got going into Worlds, and from testing, it has a pretty good Mewtwo matchup. Like, if they play the Power Plant, it's basically free. And only one in the whole top 32. I don't know if that's a reaction to the fact that it didn't do that well at Worlds. It did fine, but it could have done better. And I think maybe it's a reaction to that more than anything else. I think it's a... Maybe we go play with the new toys that we get in the ability Reshiram Charizard, and we kind of put the Manamars and the Giratinas back in the box and go, you're not consistent enough, stay over there. It's
Yeah, I think it's just mostly people reacting to it doing relatively bad at Worlds and just wanting to try at other decks. I'm still a bit surprised that there's literally only one Malamar. I think the deck is pretty good. I think it's maybe tier 1.
I honestly really like its matchups. It's just people have this there's this kind of stereotype that it's not consistent. And because it has to set up some stage 1s, it is inherently less consistent. But Reshiram Charizard does need to hit the welders early. Same with, like, Mewtwo has given me awkward hands. Pikachu Zekrom was super consistent, but can still whiff the like turn 1, turn 2 attacks if they're like if they can't get to the Coco for whatever reason. It's not that much more inconsistent than anything else, and it has a really nice matchup spread. But
yeah, I agree. I think it's less consistent than the other decks for sure, but it's not like horribly inconsistent.
It's not like Greninja was,
fine,
right? Like it's not like Greninja where at the time you were playing like Yveltal or Garb, which was just like, cool, right, we're ready turn 1 every single game because we just need an Yveltal and a Trubbish. Where like this is still consistent in comparison. It's just it's also a little bit, I think, people aren't entirely sure of what the best build and how you build Mali, because it has, again, that's another deck with a lot of choices, right? Like your primary attacker and your choice for primary attacker means you wind up choosing 3 different decks. You have the Garchomp Giratina, the Ultra Mali, and the Giratina version. But then, even further than that, if you play the Giratina version, you can play like Gengar Mimikyu, you can play Espeon Deoxys, and like you have loads of different choices you can make within the deck. And I think it might be a little bit, people aren't sure what the best build is right now. At least I think that might be because it didn't do particularly well in Worlds. There's no like easy deck to go, right, this is the one we build around.
Yeah, I think most people have settled on straight Psychic Malamar by now. I mean, it appears to be the best version. I'm not sure about it myself, but I guess it's like just the most consistent one, and you don't really need the other things in most matchups.
Exactly.
Like, Malamar is, if it sets up, it does generally fine against like all the decks above it.
Yep.
Maybe struggles a bit with Pikarom if they play the Labs or even Cyrus Prism Star, or against Rizard if they play Scoop Ups. But against everything else,
but both of those can be fixed.
Just fine.
Like both of those are somewhat fixed by playing copies of Power Plant, right? Like it's one of those decks that can play Power Plant and just not suffer from it at all. And like if you hit them Power Plant early enough against, or at any point against Mewtwo, you kind of just sit there and go, right, cool. If you shut off the Zeraora GX, it really, and like the Denes, that's Pikarom is massively hurt by that. It doesn't necessarily hurt the Reshiram Charizard that much unless they need to dig for things with the Dene, but hitting two of them, like two of the more popular decks in the format, so cleanly with that is pretty tidy.
I'll definitely play Power Plant in Malama, but the main reason for that is just shutting off Jirachi against Mewtwo. So you can just, which is why I would say Malama is a slightly favorable Mewtwo matchup right now, because if you can dodge the early Espeon Deoxys Jax attack and set up your Malamas, then just run to your Power Plant, you have a very, very favorable price. Power Plant isn't great, actually. I think I would prefer Viridian just for more consistent attacks against anything else, because Pikachu lists aren't really that hurt by Power Plant anymore because they play Jirachi engines, and Rishizat is playing 4 stadiums usually. Could even play 5 sometimes.
And they have access to things like the Marshadow anyway, right? Like a lot of lists are playing things like Marshadows, like the Reset Hole.
It's usually just Mewtwo that plays Marshadow. But yeah, Power Plant turn 1 is pretty random. It will work a small amount of times, I think. So, but it's still needed for the Mewtwo matchup. So yeah, Power Plant in Malama is I think a staple right now.
Yeah, sure. No, I actually think it's probably what I'm going to wind up playing because I have all the cards for it. Even if I don't necessarily want to play it for, like, because I want to play it kind of reasons. But it's surprisingly consistent. Like, it will get there in a lot of games. So it's something to keep an eye on, especially because now it's died off a little bit this week. This is the one that I would think maybe people sleep on it kind of thing, and do people sleep on it? Do they make their lists too greedy? And maybe it does well next week in Sheffield, because that is the next event. You're going, right? You're playing?
Yes, I'm going.
Yeah. So I won't be in attendance because I have to move house soon, and I don't have the money to spend on going to events right now. But otherwise, I'd have been there. So, do we think this is going to be very similar next week, like in terms of breakdown? I'm expecting slightly less Quagsire and Naganadel, probably less Keldeo, but I think the main two will stay the same.
I think Quagsire is actually a deck that might trend up, because Rishizat and Pikachu are both decks that struggle with Keldeo, unless of course the plays power plants like Kaiwin did. But generally, Keldeo with a Quagsire backup should be fine against Rishizat, against Pikarom, against Vacifalon, and especially against Mewtwo. Mewtwo has a lot of problems with Keldeo. So I think the deck is kind of well positioned. Not sure how consistent it is, but I think most people just drop the deck up. It's shown that it can still work. A lot more people will pick it up again. I would expect it to stick around in the meta at approximately the same percentage, maybe even played a bit more, like, depending on the tournament.
Well, I mean, as far as I know, there's a few people who, a few streamers, I'm not going to name names, Joe Bernard, who are big fans of the deck, who will be there next week. So, who knows? It could be everywhere. We'll find out.
I think Joe said he wanted to play real decks this season. So, probably not quite next.
But what if it is a real deck now? This is a problem. You can't commit to playing a real deck now.
Means tier 1 decks.
Well, before Quagsire and Naganadel becomes tier 1. Yeah, fair enough.
As for the other decks, I think Ability will have a slightly harder time next weekend because I think basically every Mewtwo player will put in for Wobbuffet now. It just
Hmm.
fits really well with that. It searches for treasures, blocks one of the biggest threats in the game, and also helpful in some other matchups. So yeah, Wobbuffet is probably going to be a staple in Mewtwo. Mewtwo might be played a bit more than before. I mean, it won Worlds, did quite decently again.
Hmm.
Mewtwo tin released this week, I believe.
Yeah,
I'm
I
not
gotta go
sure on
pick.
this
I'm
one,
gonna have to go
but
buy some of them on Friday. That's
I
on my
think
shopping list.
the deck just got more. Like, I would expect a bit more Mewtwo, and this is not good news for Charizard players.
Yeah,
And Rishizat also doesn't really like mirrors, so I mean, I would not expect day two of Sheffield to be almost 50% Rishizat, like it
sure.
was would
If
have been
anything, I can
in.
see it maybe being something like 50% to like 50% Mewtwo. Like I know there's a lot of European players who are hype on that deck, and maybe not even 50%, but like I think majority could easily be Mewtwo for this weekend. But
So I think it will be balanced when this time. I would expect Ability to still be the deck,
mhm.
and then followed by Pikarom, Mewtwo, Blaze, of course.
Yeah, I mean, but Bucephalon came second at
Most players,
Worlds, and it's been like overlooked entirely, right? Like, it's
Malama,
mhm.
underrated now. It was probably overrated before, but
Yeah, sure.
it still deserves
Your
one
audio's got really
day
quite.
two spot.
Your audio got really bad. Then can you repeat that?
Okay, so what was the last thing
You
you
said that
heard?
Manama was like the most underrated. Was the last bit.
Yeah, so I just think it deserves more than one day two.
Mhm.
I would expect a small resurgence of Malama maybe,
Mhm.
but yeah, yeah. Other than that, the tag teams are still dominating. Oh, I
Yeah.
just realized that there was literally no Gardevoir in Melbourne's top 32.
Oh yeah. Which is surprising because it was
Raw,
everywhere in Worlds, right? Like
yeah,
it.
it's kind of understandable because the ability Zard matchup is tough. Like
Yep.
I wouldn't say it's an auto loss or anything, but it's definitely not a great matchup. So it makes sense considering ability Zard is the most played deck. But I think other than that matchup, Gardevoir uh, is just incredibly good.
Mhm.
It uh, it actually won one of our cups, like the second cup this weekend that I
Mhm.
played, and it just beat three Mewtwo's in top 8, top 4, and finals. If you just play
Uh,
with Psychic Charms,
yep.
there's nothing they can do.
Yeah. Just psychic charm.
Actually, I think it was Mewtwo in top 8 and top 4, and Pikarom in finals. But yeah, still, Pikarom
Same
is
difference.
also quite a good matchup for Gardevoir.
Yeah. That's really interesting. That could also make a resurgence next week. I have no idea. It's a strong deck. It kind of popped up out of nowhere for Worlds and then kind of disappeared again. So it'll be interesting to see if that comes back out.
Yeah,
Uh,
I think it's the kind of deck that doesn't sound incredibly strong in theory, but when you play against it, it just doesn't give you a lot of time. And like, if you don't get a good setup against God of War, they just GX you pretty quickly, and then you basically just lose. So a
mhm.
lot of matchups are actually much harder than they might seem against that deck.
Sure.
Even with Rishizat, if you don't get turn 1 welder, turn 2 welder, turn 3 welder, you can still you can easily lose against Gardevoir. And of
Mhm.
course, it just gets a lot of free wins just because of So it's
You
definitely
cut
a
out
deck
then. You cut out
I'm
again.
still
I
afraid
heard,
of.
I heard, it gets a lot of free wins. Silence, and then you came back in. So I'm
It,
clueless. How does it get free wins? The charms?
yeah,
Yeah,
just the fairy charms.
yeah. It's a
So yeah, just
it's one of those decks that's hard to
afraid
build
of.
though, right? Because you had to choose your charms. Like now it's quite easy because we expect Mewtwo, you expect Pika Rom, you expect Charizard. So where you can choose a charm to help you, you do, but it's not always going to happen. And it just falls quite nicely now that it's definable in that way of like you can hit your charms for a couple of matchups. But
I think you should take the air, and
mm-hmm.
then not sure what to do about the Blase follow. I think a lot of people are still not running the heat trend, even though Shintaro played Burns.
That card
So
is so
one
good.
Ultra Beast Charm, one Ultra Beast Charm to take the auto win,
Mm-hmm.
probably worth it.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, I think with one Ultra Beast Charm, even if you play heat trend, you still have a
You're
decent
still pretty favored,
matchup. You
right?
can
Yeah,
easily
you're favored
play.
there for sure. But okay, so I'm guessing your pick for Sheffield this week is the same as the Cups this weekend, right? I'm going to take a
I'm not
stab
sure
in the dark.
yet. I usually decide at
Mm-hmm.
big tournaments,
Mm-hmm.
also at League Cups, like always. But if a tournament was now, I would play Mewtwo still, yeah.
Sure. In that case, we will move on to a more detailed look at the deck using the list that made top four by Henry Brand this weekend as our basis. So, as always, with the decks that we collect, you can go to the Limitless website, limitlesstcg.com, and have a look at the deck section. And you can actually see like things like average decks, which are really interesting when you kind of want to understand how an archetype, a particular deck works in kind of concept. But for a more detailed look into it, we'll go over the list from Henry this weekend, which I guess the thing we really want to discuss here, and like the things that need discussing first and foremost, are your attackers, right? The Mewtwo and Mew are your default attackers, but the attacks you can choose from are the bread and butter of this deck and why this deck gets to have so many good matchups. So the Solgaleo
Yeah.
GX you mentioned earlier is your kind of go-to, right? Your baseline energy acceleration 120 attacker.
Yeah. Solgaleo is like definitely staple. I think yeah, one of the most important cards in this deck.
But there's very
Just
few matchups where you don't want it, right? Like you want this all the time.
getting a yes, getting a turn one welder into Solgaleo, Turbo Strike, and then suddenly you have 5 energy on board turn one, and it's just incredible. But after that, you can just want to kill everything with Mekago, your other attackers, and
Mm-hmm.
yeah. And it
Yep.
also KOs Jirachi's, KOs of other small stuff.
Yep.
So yeah, it's
Yeah.
incredible.
It's not your kind of completely demolish something but have a drawback kind of card. It's a no, I'll just take 120, take the knockout, and gain something from this. Like it's a really really strong card in the deck. Then
Yeah.
one of the powerhouses of the deck is the Reshiram Charizard GX. Mostly Flare Strike is a very good attack, but also the GX attack with the 6 energies can be a huge swing. Putting the 300
Yeah.
up, taking a tag team knockout is like the main reason. But if you're playing things like the Makago and the Dragonite, I could almost argue it's not always necessary. Right?
I think Double Blaze is the main reason to play Charizard,
Mm-hmm.
and the reason for that is mostly Gardevoir, because you
Sure.
can get through the Psychic Charm.
Sure.
So when Gardevoir's only playing one Psychic Charm, you can just Double Blaze for Gardevoir with a Psychic Charm, and then you just win with Mekago or Dragonite or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
So the Double Blaze is really good for that. But if I play double Psychic Charm, it that's still not enough.
Yep.
So yeah, and the other reason it's good is against in the mirror, if they attack with Latios, if you can double place that, that's also
Mhm.
really good.
Mhm.
And then there's also Keldeo that you can get through this attack. So yeah,
Yeah, there are
it's
some
mostly
niche.
the it's mostly just ignoring all effects, which makes it good.
Mhm.
Flare Strike is still good. Like doing a KOing regular GX for 4 energy without having to discard anything is okay. You don't need it a lot, but it's still a decent option. Oftentimes you do 120 with either Solgaleo or Latios, and then you just finish the opposing tag team with a 230 attack.
Mhm.
Because like 120 would not be enough at that point, and you don't want to discard energies maybe. Like Mekago would get the job done as well, but Charizard is slightly better in that situation.
Sure.
So
Also,
the tech
I've
is
had weird
good
situations
to
where
have.
like outrage is kind of niche, but has come up. Of if they're
Yeah,
gonna try
true.
and like two hit KO you for whatever reason, you can kind of threaten that, and that can be kind of tidy. Then the one copy of
Yeah,
Makago GX as well. You said is in there. This is basically
yeah,
your right. That's a tag team. We need to deal with the tag team KO kind of tactic.
yeah.
Right.
It's
The
just the most flexible big attacker you can
mm-hmm,
play. It's pretty good. For 5 energy, you can KO tag teams, or Pikachu, you can KO for 4 energy, which
mm-hmm.
is good. You can also, if you have no energy and just attach Welder, you can still KO regular GX like Blacephalon for
Sure.
just 3 energy.
Mm-hmm,
Whereas with Charizard, you would need to have an energy in play already to
mm-hmm,
get the KO on Blacephalon.
mm-hmm.
So yeah, Mekago, really good option. I would probably not cut it.
Sure. Then I think the Latios is core. Right. The tag purge attack is a huge part of the deck. Uh, the fact that
I
you can
I actually think that Latios is the weakest GX in the deck
really
right now. Yeah,
interesting.
because
So
attack purge just it doesn't accelerate energy like Solgaleo does for 120 damage, which makes it harder to get like attacks with two Mewtwo's off. So
mm-hmm,
if you Latios, you basically are banking on it being enough for like you want to tech purge every game, every turn. But
mm-hmm,
almost every deck has an out to that. Like
mm-hmm,
against Gardevoir, for example, you would think the tech purge is really good, but it's actually just I think basically completely useless in the Guardian matchup. Because if
mm-hmm.
you just tech purge with Mewtwo, give him enough time to set up HX attack and power plant GX you, after
Yep.
which it just doesn't do anything anymore. And if you tag with Latios, you have also give them time, so they can set up the same play and then just KO you with the Xerneas.
Mm-hmm.
And you don't even do damage if they have a Psychic Charm attached.
Yeah.
So the
Okay.
Latios is just really weak there. And in a lot of games where it seems like Latios would be good, like against Hex, it's actually better to just Soul Galeo and then charge up to Mewtwo's and then do one kill, one kill. Because most tag team decks, like Charizard, they can't actually one hit KO you twice in a row, whereas Mewtwo, with having access
Mm-hmm.
to Mekago and Dragonite, it can back to
Mm-hmm.
back one hit KO. So it already has an advantage against other tech. So I don't think you need Latios. The one matchup where I still like it is Green's Charizard, because there if you just clear vision and then tag pitch they struggle a lot.
Mm-hmm.
Like you KO the Canyons with tag pitch and Charizard can touch you then, and they don't
Mm-hmm.
have anything like Turton to get through that. So or Heatran, like they literally don't have any options against that.
Okay. That's interesting.
So I think right now I would actually cut Latios,
Oh,
but
okay.
I'm not completely sure. But I started like the more I play the deck, the less I like Latios.
Mm-hmm.
Espeon
Um.
Deoxys on the other side, it's just the best psychic attacker we have. It's like Espeon Deoxys is actually pretty bad against other tag team matchups, but against small decks that have actual basic Pokemon that they need to. It's the way Mewtwo wins, basically. So
Mm-hmm.
against other tag teams, Mewtwo wins through just having more consistent energy acceleration, one the KOs, and against small stuff, you need to be carried by Espeon Deoxys. Like, for
Mm-hmm.
example, Malamar and Pidgey control against those. This is the most important card in the deck. And
Yeah, I mean that cross division
Espeon
GX
Deoxys,
is a hugely powerful attack.
yeah, it's actually the main reason why you play Psychic Energy. You could play straight Fire Mewtwo, which would be tag team matchups, like against other GX, but with Espeon Deoxys, you win against Malama and against Pidgey and maybe random other decks, like Spiritomb, for example. So it's
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's actually an attack that I honestly consider to be like. So I always enjoyed playing the Espeon Tramper Garb when that was out, purely because of Divide, because you could kind of set up KOs and finish KOs off nicely, and the ability to like that was with what was it, 10 damage counters, 6 damage counters, or whatever, and to be able to go right, cool. I'm going to drop 20 now. Like you can just finish games, but also because you accelerate so much energy, you can just finish games turn two. Because if you got the attachment in turn one, double attach welder again, that can finish off so many setup decks. It's insane.
yeah. Decks with small HP basics are just yeah
Yeah,
destroyed by that attack.
yeah. As we saw you do on stream, it was twice. But then we move on to the Naganadel GX. Here for the Venom Shop attack. I mean, this was
Yep.
pretty straightforward, right?
Yeah, it's just really good attack and another reason to play Psychic Energy.
Yep.
So yeah, in my list it was pretty important because I haven't played custom catcher, so this was often the way to close games, just sniping at the end for 2 prizes. Like a
Mm-hmm.
lot of games would go like I take one KO on something like a Jirachi with Turbo Strike, then take take out one tag team with
Mm-hmm.
Macago, Dragonite, whatever, and then finish the game with Naganadel.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's a
But
really good attacker. Like
yeah, I
when
think if you
70's
play
unlocked.
custom catcher, if you play custom catcher, it's not completely essential, but it's probably too good not to play.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Then, uh, well, next in the list, but not here for its attacking ability, is the Jirachi GX. Here, entirely for the Psychic Zone. Your Psychic Pokemon and your opponents don't have weakness, because otherwise, your opponent plays a Giratina, and you look at your Mewtwo, and your Mewtwo looks at the discard pile, and that matchup is all sorts of painful if you do not get Jirachi. Holy, have
Yes.
I had some awful games.
Yeah, weakness is just one of the most annoying mechanics to deal with, and having a deck that basically doesn't have weakness, it's really broken.
Yeah.
Jirachi is a staple. It's right now it's mostly attack against Malamar, but it also makes the mirror much less awkward. Even
The
though
mirror gets so
I still
complicated.
don't like playing the mirror, but yeah. In
Yeah.
theory, you could cut Jirachi if you want to just sacrifice the Malamar matchup. You could cut Jirachi and Espeon Deoxys and just make it much better in the tag team matchups. But I don't think it's worth it because decks like Malamar and Control, they will. I don't think they will go away
Mm-hmm.
enough for it to be worth it.
Mm-hmm. Um, and now, right. So the next card on the list, I I don't get this one. I'm gonna be honest.
It's probably
Kabalion
the
GX.
most controversial one.
It's purely here to buy a turn with its GX attack. Right? I don't
Yes.
understand. Like,
I think it's decent. Like I
okay.
haven't played it. I didn't even consider it before World,
Mm-hmm.
but it makes sense for sure. Like if you're just one turn behind and you need another turn to set up a KO, you just use Cobalion. It can just straight up win the game. Like
Mm-hmm.
of course you have a lot of other good GX attacks, but like if you're not playing against a deck when you need double plays, or if
Mm-hmm.
you don't play against the deck when you need cross divide, which is still most tag team matchups.
Sure.
And mostly it's just racing prizes. So then
But
the Cobalion Jigs attack basically just it buys you one turn where you maybe with a welder, and then next turn you maybe hit your well, get custom catcher up whatever you want to KO, and it's like you play it's like you had that the turn before already.
okay.
I think it's a pretty interesting card.
But if the time where you're most likely to need to use its GX attack is probably against another tag team deck, why aren't you just using the Latios? And if you said that the Latios GX would get cut, like, okay, sure, it might be because you can only have one attachment, but
Because Latios actually it loses a turn. Like when we built the deck, we thought, oh, Latios GX attack is actually pretty good. You just flip their GX counter turn one, and they can't
no,
GX
no, no, no,
anymore. It's
not the
like
GX attack,
pretty nice, but yeah.
not the GX attack of the Latios. It's regular attack,
Oh
right?
yeah, regular. I mean, they can the regular attack. They can just custom catcher around it, sniper around it. They can get through with their own GX attacks or with
Okay,
anything. Like tech purge is just not very reliable, and this thing just literally says opponent can't attack, so it 100% buys you.
okay, okay. I can see it. I remain to be convinced. I am still not 100% sold on the inclusion of this, but I can see it.
I,
It's just
I, I think it's especially nice in the mirror. Like the only thing that makes me not have it in my list right now is that mirror still felt kind of Latios heavy, so I always wanted to have my double blaze option. But
mm-hmm.
if, for example, if there's a matchup where you don't need the blaze,
Sure.
then I think the player with Cobalion would be heavily favored,
Mm-hmm.
honestly.
Okay.
So yeah, it's a controversial inclusion, but I think it's correct.
Okay. I I don't know. That's one I'm gonna have to play around with. I think. And then running at the Pokemon.
Yeah,
Again, the link will be
I also
in
haven't
the
really
chat.
tried it too much, but um,
Yeah. So then running at the Pokemon, we have the resetting hole Marshadow and the new inclusion of the Wobbuffet with Shady Tail, turning off the Prism Star Pokemon attack and abilities.
yep.
Um, so
So
that's like the bulk of the deck is in that attacking, right? Because from here on, it's then basically your choices of techs in terms of like, do you want to play custom catches and things like that. So because you said you're not right now.
yeah,
What are
so
you playing
I
in those
haven't.
slots?
So before Worlds, we basically had to make the decision of playing either custom catcher.
Oh, you're
Catcher just didn't feel like we went through like all the matchups, and every time it was with Espeon Deoxys and with Naganadel, we had enough. We just didn't need more bench control, and Scoobabs could randomly win games with the healing, were like basically with Didane and extra switching cards. So just had a lot of uses and felt better. But now, the more tag team heavy the meta gets, I think custom catcher becomes more important because if you don't play custom, you just back to back take 3 prizes again in a row, and they can just and hide behind the two prizer, which basically loses you the game. Against other tag teams, it wasn't too relevant because, for example, against Greenside, your strategy was to just tag purge every game anyway, so custom catcher didn't matter. But not now, you don't need custom. They always need to tag team inactive, and they can only wanna kill you once anyway because of a Wobbuffet, so they can't really threaten you no matter what. But in the mirror, you need to have you basically need custom catchers to take KO into KO. So custom catchers probably become currently.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's so this is like the reason why you'd include it is now more of it. It's like the meta has shifted in such a way that tag teams are clearly the dominant force, right? And you have to make sure you can hit them when you need to. Um,
Yeah,
then
it's very meta shift. Like
yeah,
at Worlds, there were matchups like Malama where Scoop Up was pretty good, but Malama got less important, Mirror got more important, along with something like some other smaller changes. So yeah, I probably would play Custom Catch instead of Scoop Up right now, but I still think Scoop Up is a good card in the deck, and um, it might go back at some point.
sure. So Henry's list plays things like a one-off radar and the energy recycle system now. Are there any other like tech inclusions for this deck that jump out as obvious, like other than the super scoop up as well?
The other Japanese guy that made top 8 with it, like there was a Mewtwo in top 8,
Mm-hmm.
and he played double Lysander, which
Okay.
is basically an anti-Gardevoir tech, I would expect, because a lot of Japanese people played Gardevoir, and I guess he just thought that Gardevoir would be a big part of the meta, because
Mm-hmm.
like in Japan it was apparently considered tier 1.
Mm-hmm.
So and it also had randomly against our deck, so I could see Lysander Labs, just mostly against Guardian, but it's not completely terrible outside of that. Well, other than that, Henry is not playing Reset Stamp,
Mm-hmm.
which I don't know if I'm a fan of that. I think at least having one Reset Stamp to have the option of it and making the do maybe some other have, if opponent knows that you play Reset Stamp, they might play a bit differently, and if they know that you don't have it, they can like play completely differently at sometimes, and just
Sure.
knowing there's no reset step this is like so nice for a lot of decks that then just don't need to thin. They can just build up combos in their hands. Like that's mm,
Yeah, I think.
you don't really need reset stamp, but I think maybe putting in one could be good. A lot of people at late actually did that already.
Mm-hmm.
So um, yeah, might see more reset stamps in the future, but the deck is still okay without. It's mostly a deck that can just create board states where the opponent just know it doesn't matter what they do, and you just win anyway. And you don't need much uh, sometimes. So yeah,
Mm-hmm. Cool.
it's
So
fine playing without. So
yeah, sure. And then it's basically at that point it's the energy split, which I think is fairly typical now. The 8-3 fire and
yeah,
psychic. Um,
I played a lot more energy. I would feel very uncomfortable playing with only 11 energy. I played 16, which is quite the difference. But I guess it works. Gen Heart is just a really good card. And we also wanted to discard energies turn 1 to attach them with Solgaleo. It's just, I
sure.
guess our list was a lot more focused on getting, like, swarming the board with energy with Solgaleo and then just doing those big knockouts.
Mm-hmm.
Whereas, of course, Henry's list is very welder focused, and
Mm-hmm.
he isn't as reliant on Solgaleo, I guess. So he probably he doesn't need to have as many energy in the discard pile.
Yeah.
Just
It's
yeah, I don't know. 11 energy makes me uncomfortable, but I suppose it works fine.
yeah. I mean, I played a few games with this exact list, and there are turns and games where like I would really appreciate like one or two extra just to make your welders more consistent and things like that. You do kind of run through them otherwise. But no, okay. Well, in that case, um, there is one other thing that we need to discuss. Actually, that I was thinking about was we were talking about this as we just before we wrap up. I put a tweet out the other day with kind of key questions and things people wanted to ask us and like us to discuss on this show. And one of the ones that we haven't touched on yet, but came up was Hidden Fates is legal this weekend. It will be legal
True.
for Sheffield. How much of an impact do we expect it to have? I honestly don't think it will have much. There might be one or two stall decks that various European players who are known for playing stall decks will bring, which now use the Jesse and James cards. But I'm still not entirely convinced if it will be a hugely impactful set outside of that.
No, it's just two cards basically. One is the new Charizard GX, which
Yep.
does 300 for 4 energy with its GX attack, which will probably be included in most, if not all, Mewtwo decks. It's just another option you have, and then even if you don't hit Welder turn 1 and turn 2, you can still just run a Q tag teams uh, with just one Welder
Mm-hmm.
and two manual attachments, which is really good. So yeah, that will probably go into Mewtwo decks, and then Jesse and James, which is maybe a one-off in Pidgeotto decks, and it might bring Shedinja back. I'm not sure about that, but because Shedinja still struggles with a lot, like
Mm-hmm.
Ninetales, and Jesse James doesn't have that much, I think, but um, yeah, it mm, makes Pidgeotto slightly better.
Mm-hmm.
So I think it doesn't really change the deck in any significant way. And yeah,
It's kind of it,
generally
right? Like,
stall decks like I don't think something like Keldeo, Bronzong Stall can use Jesse James at all. So I think the deck we can use the best is just Zip Striker or a good deck. So
mm-hmm.
um, shit Ninja basically, which I'm not sure if it will be enough. It might bring it back, it might not. But yeah, it's the set. It doesn't really change anything matchup wise. It makes Mewtwo slightly better.
Yep.
It make yeah, that's about it honestly.
I mean, like the set is mostly Pokemon without ability things on their attacks, right? Like when that's the
Yeah.
case, and only numbers matter. We're kind of limited on ways it's going to impact the format. But so that was the main question that people wanted us to touch on, which we hadn't touched upon so far. So I think that is everything we had planned for the show. Do you have any shout outs or announcements or things that I've forgotten? Because it's entirely likely.
I think we will have more announcements next week, maybe in 2 weeks.
Cool.
But for now, I
I
think.
like it. We're like pre-announcing announcements. We're getting. The world needs more announcements. Let's announce them. For on my side, just want to say a quick shout out to the casting crew that I'll be working with in Cologne. Looking forward to working with everybody and getting some testing done beforehand. Make sure that we're all as prepared as we can be. So thank you very much, everyone, for tuning in. If you have any questions and stuff, drop us a message on Twitter. You can find me at doomsday_94. Robin, what's your Twitter handle? I think I remember. You're at Limitless Robin, right? And then you can also tweet the main Limitless account, and we can check that as well. So thank you everyone very much for watching, and we'll speak to you all next week.